Sunday night in Nashville. NASCAR's premier series, a race that finished after 11:30 at night on the East Coast. That's nearly midnight. And one of the sport's most outspoken veterans is asking a question that NASCAR's front office probably doesn't want to answer. Why are we still doing this? Denny Hamlin opened up on his podcast, and what he said cuts right to the heart of a structural problem the sport has been quietly ignoring for years. The Cracker Barrel 400 at Nashville Superspeedway ran Sunday night and clocked in at 3 hours and 30 minutes total, including a rain delay approaching 90 minutes caused by storms rolling through Lebanon, Tennessee. The race wrapped at 11:25 p.m. Central Time. East Coast viewers closer to half past midnight. On his podcast, Hamlin made the case that Nashville should not be hosting a 400-mile event in the first place. His argument, the track is a flat 1.3-mile oval, speeds are significantly lower than a standard mile-and-a-half intermediate, and the result is a race that eats up far more time on the clock than the mileage number suggests. His proposed fix is direct: cut the distance. Make Nashville a 300-mile race. To understand why this matters, you need to understand how NASCAR structures its race calendar. Most intermediate track events are set at 400 miles because that's the traditional benchmark for that category. It looks clean on the schedule. The sponsors love the round number. But Nashville is not a traditional intermediate track. It returned to the Cup Series schedule in 2021 after a long absence and immediately became one of the calendar's more polarizing events, not for the racing itself, but for the conditions surrounding it. Summer heat in Tennessee is punishing, which is why the race was shifted to a nighttime start. But a late start plus a slow track plus unpredictable weather equals exactly what happened Sunday, a 3.5-hour race ending in the middle of the night. Hamlin also pointed out the catch-22. You can't move the start time much earlier because the afternoon heat makes track conditions genuinely dangerous, so the race is essentially locked into a window where late finishes are almost guaranteed. For the broader sport, this is a ratings and accessibility issue. Casual fans don't sit through a midnight finish on a Sunday. Families with kids certainly aren't. Every race that drags past 11 o'clock is an advertisement for changing the channel. Here's what makes Hamlin's argument genuinely compelling and what makes it so uncomfortable for NASCAR to address. The core logic is airtight. Race distance is supposed to represent a certain amount of competitive time. When you have two 400-mile races and one of them takes 2/3 the time of the other because the speeds are so different, the distance number has stopped meaning anything. You're not giving fans the same product. You're giving them the same label on a different box. Hamlin used Michigan as his benchmark. A 400-mile race there runs dramatically faster because the track is bigger and quicker. Nashville, despite sharing the same mileage designation, simply cannot match that pace. The result is a race that punishes viewers more than it rewards them. Now here's where it gets strategically tricky for NASCAR as an organization. Distance numbers are tied to sponsorship contracts, broadcast deals, and decades of precedent. Telling a title sponsor that the Cracker Barrel 400 is now the Cracker Barrel 300 is not a casual conversation. There are financial structures built around those designations. And then there's the television reality. Primetime starts exist because networks pay for them. A race that begins at 7 p.m. To catch a better audience is a race that, at Nashville's pace, will almost always be a late-night event regardless of weather. The real risk in doing nothing is the slow erosion of casual viewership. Every fan who falls asleep before the finish or simply doesn't bother tuning in because they know it'll run long, that's an audience NASCAR cannot afford to lose right now. Hamlin isn't being dramatic, he's being practical. And sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one who's simply right. Reaction to Hamlin's take has split pretty cleanly along two lines. On one side, you have the viewers who are still awake at midnight watching a NASCAR race in June and immediately understood the frustration. These fans are nodding along. The math really doesn't work. Why are we watching a 400-mile race that feels like a 6-hour commitment? On the other side, the traditionalists push back hard. You don't shorten Cup Series events. You don't start trimming distances because one track runs slower than another. That's a slippery slope. Next it's superspeedways, then the road courses, then suddenly every race is a sprint. The media angle here is interesting too. Beat reporters covering NASCAR have been circling this topic for a while. Hamlin saying it loudly in a popular podcast doesn't create the conversation, it just forces it into the open, and that's usually how change happens in sports. NASCAR takes the feedback seriously and begins a quiet review of race distances at tracks where lap times push events past a reasonable broadcast window. Nashville gets adjusted to 300 miles within the next 2 scheduling cycles. Viewership holds. Late night finishes become the exception rather than the rule, and the sport looks responsive to its own athletes and audience. NASCAR protects the 400-mile designation to satisfy broadcast and sponsorship agreements. Nothing changes, and Nashville continues producing the same late-night, rain-delay-prone spectacles year after year. Casual fans keep drifting. The window for a fix gets smaller, and eventually the conversation shifts from should we shorten it to should Nashville even be on the schedule. So we'll put it to you directly. Is Denny Hamlin right? Does NASCAR need to rethink how it assigns race distances based on track speed and viewer experience? Or is shortening the Nashville race a compromise that opens a door to watering down the entire schedule? Because this isn't a small debate, how NASCAR answers this question says a lot about whether the sport is willing to evolve for its audience or keep running the same playbook until the audience stops showing up. Tell us where you land in the comments, and if you want this kind of no-filler NASCAR analysis every week, hit subscribe. We'll be here.